Welcome to Butterfly Journeys and Midlife Adventures, where we share real stories of travel, transformation, and new beginnings. I'm your host, Joanna Filmer, and I want you to know that midlife is our time to step beyond expectations and to use travel or even relocation as a powerful tool for rediscovery and reinvention. Let's go. Hi, Pamela. Welcome to the podcast. I've been really looking forward to this conversation. Just tell us first before we start out, where are you today?
Today I'm in Canada. I'm on Vancouver Island. I am doing a pet sit at just outside of a little city called Souk, BC.
So tell me, 3 years ago then, you made a decision that a lot of women are thinking about or dreaming about. You left home and you stepped out into the world. You began living a completely different life. So let's start by going back to that particular moment. What was happening in your life that made you come to that huge decision and decide to just take off and go start this new adventure?
Yeah. It wasn't just one thing. It was a few things. I had just turned 50. So started doing, I don't know, I had read this book of Jane Fonda. She talks about her act 3. So just started doing a little bit of an act 3 sort of evaluation. What do I want to do with my life? Basically where I was living, my kids had all left that city and spread out. My 2 closest friends had also recently moved. I'm going to have this. Sorry. I was divorced. I was doing jobs that I loved, but they had become, I didn't know, sort of. Anyways, I just started evaluating my life. And then I heard about somebody I went to high school with that had had an aneurysm and died, which was very, very sad. People kept saying about like doubling down and I'm going to work harder so I can retire earlier. Anyways, I just decided I was joking that I was never going to be able to retire. I didn't, wasn't the smartest in my divorce. And I just was at a place that, one day retiring wasn't actually really much of an option. And I just had a weird thought to take a gap year, like a pre-retirement year. I was going to travel for a year. And at the end of that year, I was going to start again somewhere else. Like I said, my kids had all spread out. So yeah, I started traveling. I did some pet sitting, did some stuff explored the PNW in the United States, which I'd always wanted to.
What was the kind of process that you went through then before you left? Like, because there's a lot to think about, isn't there? So
Yeah.
how long did it take you and what did you do in that interim between? So you had that moment where you kind of was like, I don't want to, I'm not waiting for retirement to live. Is that basically where you'd got to?
I mean, it's weird to say out loud because it didn't feel that dramatic when I did it. I just sort of had this idea. I really remember I saw this quote. It's like, if not now, when? Yeah, I just started slowly selling off my things. I taught dance at a dance studio and I didn't actually really want anybody to know because our students had been coming off of 2 years of COVID and stuff, and I didn't want to make a big thing, but I did. I quietly found a replacement for myself. I really quietly put my condo up for sale. And yeah, just over like a 3-month period, I found a replacement at my one job. I sold 90% of my belongings. I sold my condo.
Big
Yeah, it
step.
was. Pardon? Yeah.
Quite quickly, actually, within 3 months. That's a short
Yeah.
turnaround. What
Yeah.
did your family think? What did your kids think?
My kids thought it was great. A lot of people were shocked, and I had a lot of people advising about not selling my place, but I don't know, it just seemed like the thing to do, so I did.
Do you regret that now, selling the place, or do you still feel that that was the right move at that point in
Yeah.
time? You did the right thing
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah, I totally don't. It does seem drastic, and sometimes when I look at the market and stuff, I'm like, I don't know that it was the best financial decision, truthfully, but, I for sure don't wanna go back to go back living there. I've kept a little bit aside for if one day I find a new place that I wanna settle, I can have a little down payment on another place, but no, it feels right, and I remember when I was leaving and I had my car was packed to the brim, and I was going to, Airbnb, actually. I still had to stay in town for about another week. So I was just moving to a Airbnb and feeling on the one hand, like overwhelmed with what I had done. I literally moved everything and sold everything myself. Again, my kids were all spread out and my 2 close friends had moved and I don't know, it just felt like something I needed to do on my own. But it was like time I finished cleaning my place for the new owners, it was like 2 in the morning, and I was sitting in my car, which was filled to the brim, and I was both felt unbearably light, but then also at the same time so terrified.
Had that moment of fear then. So when that happened, when you had that thought and you're sitting in that car, what did you say to yourself?
I mean, and I still say this quite often, which is, well, I've done it now, so I just have to go forward. So I would say I still every once in a while will be in a situation or have done something where I'm like, what the hell have I done? And then it's like, well, I did it. So now I just got to figure out what the next step is.
So
Yeah.
you
So
had
that's,
faith. You had faith in
I
yourself. You could
guess,
trust
yeah.
yourself.
I would say I'm a fairly resilient, strong person. So even when I do feel quite overwhelmed, which has happened a lot the last 3 years, I try to just remember, like, well, you've gone through honestly worse things and you survived. So whatever you're dealing with today or tomorrow, like you will survive that too. That's, kind of what you do.
It's a yeah, and that's a
Yeah.
really powerful message, and I think that's something that is important for us to remember as women, that we do have it within us. We are resilient, and we always seem to get through it, you know? I
Yeah.
have that mantra is everything will pass, and it does, and I think, when you get to this stage in life, you've been through so much, you've got that resilience. It's there, it's built in, you
Yeah.
know? Maybe you don't think so because you start to doubt yourself, but you do have it. So, okay, so when you left then, what was your plan when you left? What was you gonna do? You
When
had that money
I
from here, but what were you gonna do?
I honestly only had the first I had a couple of vague ideas, but when I left, I only had the first well, it would have been like 4 months planned. The first part was actually just a trip with my 2 daughters, which had been one that we had been postponed a few times because of COVID. So that was my first is, my daughters and I actually went to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, actually, and yes, loved it. It was so good. And then, the next 2 months, I had, pet sits and some places lined up in the States, and so I had 2 months there. And then I had a couple of ideas, but I didn't actually have anything 100% booked or solidified. I had joined when I'd had this idea about the traveling, I joined, um, I will do a small plug, it's called Trusted House Sitters,
Yeah, I think
and
it's a well-known one.
I've been on that for 3 years, and that was my first 2 months in the States, was doing some pet sits and some I just found some random little places that I wanted. So that first year, I came back to Canada for a little bit over the holidays. I ended up going to Guatemala for a month, which was huge, huge, like, perspective. It was a big experience for me, and it's funny because I hadn't planned. I had planned to go to Peru. I had everything set up to go to Peru. They had some very intense civil unrest there at the time. It was when, yeah, the one president ended up in jail. Anyways, they canceled that, and so instead I went to Guatemala. I spent a month there, and it was amazing, and it was really good for me. I feel like I got brave there. I met a couple of really good people that I'm still in touch with. I did my first volunteering stint. I actually stayed with a family. It's where I first realized that I could live in much different conditions than I thought.
Sorry, can I just say I'll ask you about Guatemala. So with
Yeah.
you just said that you felt brave. That was when you started to
Yeah.
realize that you were brave. What happened that made you feel that you were brave?
Well, it was so different from any way that I had traveled before. I really, the only sort of travel that I had ever done while I was married was to like resorts, like all inclusive resorts. And this was I signed up to do, it was a part of a volunteer program where you were teaching English to kids after school and then also taking Spanish and also staying with a local family. And so, first of all, the place that I stayed, the family was amazing. I still keep in touch with them, but it was so far removed from my level of comfort in terms of where I was staying. There was no Wi-Fi or hot water, which was like so yeah, and I had promised myself that I would try to meet people and I just every person that I saw that, I would just make a point to go up and talk to them, whether it was at Spanish classes, at the volunteer thing. It was a pretty big center and there was a lot of different volunteer opportunities. I kept, yeah, I organized a couple of get-togethers with like a bunch of random volunteers. At one point, literally by the end of the month, I ended up going to Lake Atitlan with 3 people that I had just met there, and we rented a house for 5 days. And yeah, I took salsa classes. I volunteered to do these coffee dates with to help people with their Spanish, which my Spanish was terrible. Yeah, it was the first time that I sort of felt very brave and independent. Everybody said that I had been for just doing what I did, but I just sort of, the first few months was just, I didn't want what I was doing. So I just was doing something different, you know, full of fear, which I mean, being brave is doing things when you're afraid anyways. But I felt brave in Guatemala for the first time. I felt overwhelmed. Yeah, something about Guatemala, that was a pivotal moment for me. It's
So
just
that was a
funny.
Yeah, so it was a different culture, so it was pushing you to learn things and step into your fears in a different way. But I think probably for women that are listening, I think when you talk about being on your own for the first time in your life, that for many women is something that really scares them as well because they're just not used to it, like you just
Yeah.
said. So how did you cope with that? How did you find that? What did you do in those spaces when you felt alone or lonely?
Well, and I mean, this is very specific to me, although honestly, probably there are some women listening that will relate to this. The being alone and even the being lonely when I was at first doing like some of the road trips and stuff. I will just say that the loneliest that I have ever felt was when you're married to somebody that doesn't see you or listen to you. Yeah, I had a few years of feeling lonely every single day, despite living with somebody and sleeping next to somebody. Like there is a crushing loneliness of being with somebody, but still feeling alone. So compared to that, the going on a road trip, going in, I did spend like 2 months by myself completely in the States. That never compared to it. But I would, if anybody is worried about that, I would just say we live in this great age of technology. And one of the things that I did right at the start, I actually joined a online journaling club, which had like these Zoom meetings once a week. And basically are just journaling and discussing, I don't know, different topics with other people. So I did that. And then I also had, I would say again, anybody that's thinking about either whether it's becoming a nomad or just doing an extended trip by themselves, like set up, I had like 3 different friends that sort of each week I would have like a long FaceTime with one of them and, they'd have a glass of wine and I would, and we would chat. But at the end of the day, being alone, when you choose to be alone, like, it might seem scary at first, I think some women will be like, "Oh, this is terrible," but I would just say, like, to dig underneath. Is it really terrible, or have we just been conditioned to think that being alone is terrible?
Mm.
Because I'm gonna say once you're alone for a little bit of time, like, I love my children, and I continue to have amazing and wonderful close relationships with them, and I will almost always, if they need something, it's just my natural, I will give them what they need, I will change my plans to accommodate them. At the same time, being alone and doing whatever you want every day whenever you want to and not having to share a bathroom, man, that's a beautiful, glorious thing that I don't think enough. I think women are so scared of being alone, they don't think about that because that is awesome,
It's
or it has
it
been in
is,
my
it's
experience.
empowering and it's oh my goodness, there's so many words that you can use to
Yeah,
describe what it feels like, but I know exactly what you mean. It's a real sense of freedom.
it's funny, there's a word, and I think it gets used a lot, but I have frequently thought this is the word that I'm feeling right now, which is I actually remember my first time, and it was in Guatemala, and there was a little coffee shop, it was on a rooftop, and I was having a coffee, and Guatemala has a ton of volcanoes. I actually climbed one when I was there, but I was looking at the volcano and I was journaling and I had a cappuccino and I just thought, this is liberation.
That's a great one.
which, yeah, I think it's a word you don't use often, but I just remember feeling like, yeah, total liberation.
I love that. That is the perfect word. It is the ultimate liberation. And I love that idea of you sitting there in front of this volcano,
Yeah.
knowing that you climbed it and that you're sitting there journaling. I love that. Actually, I'll just talk to that journaling. Why do you I journal personally, and
Mhm.
other people, when you've said it, they're like, "Oh, I'm not sure about that." Why do you find it powerful to journey? Have you journaled the whole time you've been away? And
Yeah,
why do you do it?
I did start journaling, well, honestly, off and on since my divorce. But then, since once I started traveling, I had the thought, well, it not had the thought, it's still a thing, of of journaling every day, just even a couple lines, just to sort of document it. Both places I've been, people I've met, things I've seen or done, also sort of my state of mind. Honestly, I'd started it as a I'll write a book when I'm done. And I'd had a thought that, like, I would do 1 year and then write a book about my year. I have, over the last 3 years, realized that for me, journaling is therapy, very, very therapeutic. I think when you start journaling and so you are making notes and trying to hold on to memories, I feel like it makes you actually more present and notice more things on a daily basis. Um yeah, my one daughter had said something about, she's like, "You notice so many." I'll be like, "Did you see this? Did you hear that?" And I've started to think that, yeah, like a wonderful byproduct of journaling is that it does make you notice things, I guess, because I'm always thinking of what I'm to remember it, to write it down. But I will see a bird that nobody else sees, or notice the way the sun hits a flower or something.
I completely agree with you. I will see things and hear birds, and I'm so much more observant since this time I've been away. I've been journaling a long time, but it seems to have been that once I've gone out of my environment and my day to day, which is your routine, isn't it? Every day to day. So you end up, unfortunately, not noticing sometimes the small things. But I think once you come out of it, you do start to notice the small things more, because you're more intrigued, you're more curious, because it's not the same thing. So it does kind of kick this, it's like the external kind of like initiates what's going on internally as well. So after Guatemala, then what did you do after Guatemala? What was the next step?
I went to Africa. I had recently been gotten in contact again, renewed a friendship of somebody that happened to be working in Kenya for a couple of years. And she had said, like, if you're going to be traveling and you want to come to Kenya, you can stay with me. And I don't think I ever would have been brave enough to try it at that point on my own, but because I knew that I would have that first stop be in Kenya with my friend, then I also found a volunteer opportunity in Arusha in Tanzania.
Okay.
I think I was in 6 weeks. I will say the time in Kenya was awesome with a friend, and just getting it was a nice way to explore a new country that was so far removed, but also safe because she knew a lot and had a lot of tips. And then I did go to Tanzania and I did a volunteer thing there, which is when I learned about some volunteer situations. It's a pretty big thing, that volunteerism is, I think, what
Yeah,
they call
okay.
it. And some are fantastic. The one that I did in Guatemala, I have only good things to say about it. The one that I did in Tanzania, I would not recommend that company to anybody. Um, and I would just say, anybody who's doing volunteering, there's a lot of volunteer opportunities where you pay to volunteer. And I think it's really important to do better research than I had done about exactly where your money is going. It was an amazing 3 weeks in terms of, I don't know, perspective shifting.
What was you doing there?
So I was teaching English at a school. It was a local school, well, actually just outside the town. It was a very 90% of the students at that school were actually from a local orphanage. So it was really, really, really underfunded. And yet the kids were amazing. The teachers that I worked with, there was a pretty big language gap, but still they were wonderful. And I also just realized there, and to anybody that's doing anything, like, is whatever you're doing is good enough, but for me personally, after being there such a short time, I would not volunteer again unless I can commit a longer time. I think especially when you're working with kids, to
Yeah.
only go for that short of a time, I just left there feeling like I was selfish, like, because the kids were very both the kids and the teachers were very upset that I left, and I just felt like I had just scratched the surface of doing anything useful, and it yeah, so it was amazing. I did also in the midst of the volunteering, I did a safari, a 2-day safari, and saw the most beautiful place, one I think that I've ever seen, which is the Ngorongoro crater, which is in Tanzania, and it's the mass migration that everybody talks about. It goes through that crater.
Right.
Overall, I don't regret it at all. I have since become a very big advocate for people doing really good research before they volunteer anywhere, just because I felt really, I felt ripped off, and I felt like the school was very much ripped off by this company.
I was just thinking
Yeah.
then, so you now been away a year, and I just wanted to talk to the because I think throughout your 3 years, you've done quite a lot of house sitting and pet sitting. What's been your experience in that space? I'm interested to hear your perspectives and what you've learned through that process of actually being in something that's a trusted organization. That was a
Yeah.
very well-run company.
Yes. I have had amazing experiences. Honestly, I've only had sort of 2 that weren't, like, great, and that was just one, they were just sort of small things, like, just but for the most part, I've had really great experiences. I would say really, really important because I know a few other people that have had, not as good, and I just will never I did it once, and so I learned a good lesson. I will never pet sit for somebody that doesn't ask for a video interview. It's quite common. They'll want to have a Zoom interview because they want to check out who you are. And it also gives you a good idea of who they are, and you can get them to give you a tour of their house and you can see the pets and then also just get like a good I don't know whether you have a good feeling or not and whether you would be a good fit. One time I didn't do a video interview and yeah, and those people ended up changing the dates on me the day before, which I already had things booked. And so that was the only not great experience I had. I will say, like, it's really important when you're doing it because I know different people, everybody has different ideas of how pets are treated in terms of them being animals, members of the family, that type of thing. Like, that you just have to go into the situation doing exactly what the owners want you to do, whether you agree with it or not. And then also, I guess, just the idea that everybody has different house rules, levels of cleanliness, like those kinds of things. But I just, for the most part, anybody that is paying the fee to be there, they are at in one level, like, care about their pets very much, and I don't know, I find most pet people are good people. That's a broad generalization, but I that's been my experience so far, and I have since the sit that I'm on right now, this is a repeat sit. This was one that I did before 3 years ago. Next week this will be the 3rd time that I've gone to visit them since I took care of their dogs. We sort of became friends. Yeah, I have found it to be really, really good. I know some people think it's a bit scary, but you have to do a criminal record check as a sitter and, like, identity verification, so do the owners, so there is that. And then I never take a sit that doesn't have at least 5 decent reviews. It's a really good way to budget travel. Like a really, really good way to budget travel. Also, I'm gonna say if you are worried at all about, being lonely, there is nothing like, I don't know, a dog or a cat to cuddle with at the end of the day. If you are really into, like, just the more traveling, then something that you can do on Trusted House Sitters anyways is, like, only search for houses with cats. Because honestly, if you're taking care of a dog, like,
It's something to
yeah, you're not able to explore as much, whereas if it's a cat, usually cats can be left alone for a little bit longer.
good advice. So, get a video interview, make sure there's at least 5 reviews. And where you're going, think about whether you wanna have a dog or a cat, because that will give you
Yeah.
different ways of being able to explore. Tell me, on your journey, have you had any points where you've wanted to give up?
I can think of 2 times. So, well, I feel like maybe there's a bit I don't know give up is the right word, but I did part of the Camino de Santiago. Is after my time in Africa, I went to Spain and I did part of the Camino de Santiago, which is this I
Yeah,
don't know,
the
it's
walk
a long walk
pilgrimages,
across
yeah,
Spain.
yeah.
Yeah. And I actually only did the last 210 kilometers of it. I didn't do all of it. But I had some problems with, well, A, that my pack was way too heavy. B, it was very early in the season. I had some really bad weather. Uh, and also 2 nights in a row where I struggled to find accommodation. And then also at one point, my credit card stopped working and, my debit card didn't work at most places, and there was a lot of places that only took cash, and I couldn't find a bank that was anyways, the last, like, 5 days, I was just on very little cash, and then every place I went, just going to each restaurant until I found one that took a debit card like a tap card. Yeah. And I do remember at one point really thinking, I'm just gonna take a bus. Like, why am I doing this? Nobody's making me walk this far, and I'm gonna run out of money, like cash, and I'm hungry and my back hurts. But I did finish it, and I'm very, very glad that I did. But honestly, the worst part i- this past year, so after 2 years of travel, like the quick, like towards the end of my first year, I basically was like, I don't want to go back to normal life. I want to keep doing this. How do I keep doing this? So I started teaching English online and I did a bunch. I spent some time in South America last year. But, anyways, this past year, I took a teaching position in Hong Kong for a year. I thought, A, I needed to make a little bit more money than what teaching online does. And B, I thought it would be a good place as a home base to explore some parts of Asia. And it just also seemed like, wow, that's a big, huge new challenge. I'll move to Hong Kong for a year. And it was really, really hard for many, many different reasons. But there was a point mid year, I got some bad news of a personal nature. I was feeling very alone. I was dealing with some complications from my divorce. And yeah, I really didn't like the job that I had, the teaching that I was doing. And I had a solid month of what am I doing here? And if I hadn't signed a contract that penalized you for leaving early, I don't know. Yeah, it was really, really hard. And at
They're
one point
they're 2 difficult things. I think the first one, when you go back where when you was talking then about the Camino and what happens with
yeah,
you there, that's one of my biggest, um, fears to overcome is when money gets into a tricky situation, because some countries now want cash, like Morocco here now, people want to use cash, they use cash, so the card becomes more difficult to use, and then in some other countries, it's about the card and not the cash. So
yeah.
in that situation, even though you pushed on, what did you do in that particular situation? Was it just that I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna get through it.
Yeah, it was just that every single morning, I would literally look because I knew I could get it. I would look at the bus schedule and think I could just take a bus, and then I remember thinking, "No one will know," but it was just like, just try, just, like, you will, like, in 10 years, you will hate yourself if you don't finish this thing.
So with Hong Kong, you said you got a point where you had that really difficult month.
Yeah,
And what did you do? Because it's very different. I guess, like for me, I think about being in Spain. It's a European culture, and so there are things around you that you can still resonate with. Whereas when you're in Asia, Asia is a completely different culture again. So you can feel more alone in a completely
yeah.
different culture because the language is so different. Visually, the language is so different, and the lifestyle is so different. So how did you get through that month there when you felt that darkness, as you put it?
Yeah. Um, well, first, I will be honest, it was probably closer to 2 months. I cried a lot. I cried a lot. I started where I worked was in what's called the Kowloon, and then there's actually, like, I live anyways, there was a train that I normally took, but I did start walking home almost every day, which was a really long, far walk, but it was a weird I'm not sure, some type of walking
It's
meditation, something. I will be honest, I am very grateful to both of my daughters because I think probably at least once a week had a video chat with them where I cried and they let me cry. Mm, well, I'll tell this really embarrassing story. When I say I cried a lot, I did. I was on the MTR one day, that's their train system, and I was thinking about things and I started crying. But yeah, I don't know, I just kept going because I don't know. Again, I guess that's just what you do. I didn't want to give up. And honestly, some of the things that I was dealing with, the only thing would different if I had come back to Canada would have been that, I could have seen my kids and gotten a hug, which might honestly some days seemed worth the flight back to
yeah.
Canada for that. But mostly I just kept going and then it slowly got better and then it, mostly got better.
What are the positives that come out of that experience? Because I think some people would listen to that and think, "Oh my goodness, I would never ever wanna be in that
Yeah.
situation." And life can throw that kind of situation at you
Yeah.
anywhere. But being in
Yeah.
a different culture in that situation that you was in, what do you think that was the positives that actually came from that?
I mean, honestly, there's like a lot. Again, it's just the feeling I keep forgetting, but every time I remember for a little bit longer. But I keep remembering that I really am strong and can handle anything. I would also just even like you like butterflies, that idea of the butterfly effect, whereas like one thing changes, everything changes. And I started feeling better and better. I wasn't quite all the way there, but I saw an ad on Facebook for a diving school in the Philippines, which I'd always wanted to learn how to scuba dive. I never did because it just seemed like both too expensive and too time consuming where the kids were young and I don't know, just it just became one of those things, well, you never will, basically. And I saw this ad and I'm in Hong Kong. It's not that far to the Philippines. People go back and forth all the time. I saw this and I really just I saw it and, like, kept thinking about it, and 3 days later, I signed up to do a online scuba diving course and then booked a ticket to the Philippines for my July school break, which if I had left Hong Kong, I wouldn't have done any of that, and I ended up in the 1st week of July, I went to the Philippines, I did 3 open water dives, and I got certified to scuba dive at 53, which I never would have
Fantastic.
thought. Yeah, 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 it really, really was. It was incredible, and I went to the Philippines and I scuba dived and saw
Yeah,
big
and you wouldn't
giant
have
sea
done that
turtles.
if you hadn't have gone to
Yeah,
Hong Kong.
yeah.
And
So
maybe actually because of what went on in Hong Kong, it gave you that, "I'm gonna
yeah,
go and do this," it kind of pushed you to do it because you
yeah,
needed to maybe get out of the situation that you was in. So,
yeah,
it actually pushed you to go and face and do something that you'd always wanted to do. I love
yeah.
that. I love that. So, what do you think's been the biggest challenge through the 3 years, like, of living, traveling and living solo? What do you think has been your biggest challenge, like, emotionally or kind of practically or spiritually, I guess?
I mean, this is, again, very particular to me, I don't think, but I can look back now, I still haven't actually figured all of this out, but I can look back now and think that I thought a year of travel that somehow that would fix a bunch of things or maybe like heal a bunch of things. Yeah, a lot of childhood trauma and a lot of issues from my marriage and then divorce. I thought that year of travel, I would like become this new person who didn't have those problems. And I thought the travel would just sort of fix all of them. And I think what the year in Hong Kong finally made me realize is that my daughter actually was reading this book and it's called Wherever I Go, There I Am, and that is what I discovered in the last my first year, I spent all year trying to, I just thought if I don't know, walked far enough in Spain or climbed a volcano or went to Africa, then I would come back to Canada and, I don't know, be a new, better person, and not have any of these issues. And I have since found out that it doesn't work like that. But I will say, so yeah, that was a very big challenge for the last 2 years because I came back from that first year and had to deal with a bunch of things actually and was like, wow, nothing has changed other than which that's not true. I got really brave and I had some amazing experiences and I started to figure out, I guess, like who I am a little bit more. And then yeah, over the last 2 years, it's been a work in progress. So that was a challenge. I would say that anybody who is looking to whether it's to either become a nomad or just to take a trip or go on some retreat and that will be the thing, the, "Aha!" I don't think it works like that. I I mean, maybe it will for some people. I'm a pretty slow learner. It would work for other people, but for me, it didn't. But I do think that it just makes you feel brave enough to maybe conquer. If you can conquer solo travel, I think then you get brave enough to conquer some trickier stuff like your own demons or,
Yeah. I think that's great. I think that's really good, because I think you hit the nail on the head. Your problems or your past or whatever it is that you have inside of you is never gonna leave you, and you can try and outrun it, and you can try and outwalk it, and you can try and move away from it, but it still comes with you. So I guess I believe that when we travel, it's important to have an awareness of that, and that's why I like these conversations, to know that if you're gonna go and step into a space, that it's important to consider where you're going, why you're going, and to also start the internal journey, because it's an internal journey as much as it's the external, isn't it?
yeah,
You start to live with yourself, and things do come up, and they don't always come up at when you want them to or when you expect them to. That's a
yeah,
part of the journey, is learning how to deal with those issues when they come up, or those problems, or whatever it is. Uh, but traveling does push you to face your fears, which then allows you, like you just said, to then confront your internal fears and your internal whatever it is that you need to
yeah,
work on the inside.
yeah,
I love that. So after that, then, so you've learned so much in these past 3 years. I mean, it's just been such an incredible journey for you. Looking back, then, what do you think you've evolved as? Like, what's been your biggest shift? Do you think, as a woman, as a human,
mm.
as a traveler?
Honestly, I feel like I travel if you are open to it, can just sorta crack you open in terms of empathy. I have become sometimes annoying, hopefully not too annoying, but just the privilege that some of us have just because of some random country we were born in. Like, it is every single day something that I think about how, yeah, Canada, we're very lucky, like, I'm from Canada, and, yeah, I just don't think that ever before was I, like, thankful for just randomly being born in Canada. I didn't do anything special to be born here, I just was, and, I just had a totally different blessed like, you can have a terrible childhood and not, have a lot of privilege, but still, if you are just born in Canada, you have privilege. So I would just say like that has been a big thing. It's changed the way I look at I don't know, I've become quite interested in just anything from sustainability to, yeah, just different rights, educational rights. Like it's just made me a much more empathetic person.
Yeah.
Which I that doesn't necessarily happen to everybody in their travel. I think if you're budget traveling, which I have been, then you sort of stay in places and meet people that you wouldn't otherwise, and it just makes you I just feel like I am every day, even on my darkest days, every day I'm just grateful. So that's been a big thing. Yeah, that's
Being
been one of my
present. You said being
yeah,
present, being grateful, noticing the small things, understanding the privilege that you come from, something that we don't often understand really. If you've not stepped out of your own world, you can have no real understanding, I don't think. You can see it on movies and read about it, but I think actually when you go somewhere, like you said about living in, Guatemala and then going into Hong Kong,
yeah,
just moving around in different, like Africa, you see all of the different ways that humanity lives, and it
yeah,
does create a sense of empathy, but it also, I think it creates a sense of oneness. You start to see that everybody is the same. They may look different, they may speak different, they may live different, but essentially we're all the same. We're all just looking to survive, look for happiness, find love, just the basic things that we want in life. Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about travel for me personally, and that's exactly what you've just
yeah,
articulated there.
yeah.
So, how from this experience then, so you've just talked about them, these are the things that have come up for you now that truly matters. What's changed, do you think, from 3 years ago to now?
I would say like honestly just about everything. I mean, not like I still have friends like from before and like, I don't know, I guess I'm in some ways still the same person, but yeah, I look at the world totally different now. I would also say, I don't know, again, if you travel and let yourself be open, I think I have a very high sense of wonder for my age. I'm constantly like I feel a lot of awe, which some of it is like incredible places that I have been and things that I have done. But some of it is just even, I don't know, even ordinary things that I think I wouldn't have noticed before. But something about, yeah, traveling, I don't know, I think it sort of strengthens your sense of awe, which I feel like a lot of us lose as we get older.
Yeah,
That's been a nice thing too.
it is because you see, like you talked earlier about being more present and noticing things, and you do begin to see the awe. I mean, it could be a sunset, it could be a sunrise, it could be a beautiful tree, it could be a beautiful flower. So, if you could say your last question then is if you could sit with your version of yourself from 3 years ago, the one who's just about to leave and step into your new life, what would you tell her about courage and change and trust in the journey? What would be your advice or your words to that woman 3 years
Yeah.
ago? What would you say to Pam who's sitting in that car
Yeah.
going, "What am I doing?"
If I would say that you are doing exactly what you should be doing. And even as future me speaks now, and I still have no idea what the future will hold, and you will cry on 4 different continents in so many different countries. But yeah, the things that you're going to see and how strong you're going to get, and I don't know, just the people you will meet, it will all be worth it. But I would say, I know you think a year of travel is going to fix all your problems. It's not going to, but that's okay. You will get there eventually.
Do you think you could have prepared for that? Actually, that's a really good point.
No, I
That's
don't
just
think
part of the
so.
journey, actually.
I think that's just part of it. And as I say that, I was talking as if I have figured everything out now. I still haven't. My current thing is everybody's always talking about being authentic. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't know who authentic Pam is. So that's my current thing. And I don't somebody said, "Well, where will you be in 2 years?" I have no idea. I don't know if how long I'll keep doing this. But, yeah, I wouldn't some of it's actually been really, really hard, much harder than I thought it would be. I've had way more low points than I expected, but I still actually wouldn't change anything, really.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the joy of the journey, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
actually, would you go back to where you were 3 years ago? No.
No, no. And I will say this is just like a tiny little thing. And this is a little bit I've had a lot of people that a couple former students and honestly my kids that have said like, I was going to do this and I was scared too, but then I thought of my students used to call me Miss Pam. And I thinking of a few that they're like, but then I thought of Miss Pam who quit her job and went to Guatemala and then I thought, "Oh, you can do this." So every once in a while, I feel like, I don't know, me being brave helps somebody else be brave, and that feels pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's a great
So,
feeling to have, and that's a
yeah,
great thing. That's a piece of personal insight into the
yeah,
journey that you've been on, is that you can actually, even though you've been on this whole journey yourself, you're able to also inspire others just by doing what
yeah,
you're doing.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope that any woman that listens to this will find some sort of learning for themselves and be inspired by your story and what you've just done and how you're living your life now. Thank you so much. You've been listening to Butterfly Journey's Midlife Adventures with me, Joanna. Until next time, may you keep awakening, emerging, and evolving on your own midlife butterfly journey. Follow the podcast, hit subscribe, and share it with your fellow midlife butterflies. And if you have a story to share, reach out. My emails and DMs are in the show notes. I would love to hear from you. Your journey could inspire another woman.